More twists and turns in the search for a wanted Washington dad. The manhunt for Travis Decker, the father accused of murdering his 3 young daughters, has stretched on for nearly a month. New images released by the U.S. Marshal Service highlighting the harsh conditions that tactical teams have been dealing with. Now, authorities say Decker may have died while on the run. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kennedi Walker, and I'll walk you through the details. You're watching Law and Crime. Newly released images from the U.S. Marshal Service are painting a stark picture of the relentless search for Travis Decker, the ex-soldier accused of killing his 3 young daughters, Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia. The photos show tactical teams navigating rugged mountainous territory using camo, spotting scopes, and long-range precision rifles. Despite weeks combing the Washington wilderness, Decker remains a high-priority fugitive.
86% of our county is not accessible by road. If you go out there, it's steep terrain. It's heavily wooded. It's not the easiest to access.
Now, investigators say there's no clear evidence that he's still in the area or even alive. In an update, the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office writing, seemingly strong early leads gave way to less convincing proofs over the last 2 weeks of searching. Still, we can't and won't quit the search. Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia Decker deserve justice. With that, the focus now shifting to recovering possible remains. Decker has been wanted since June 2nd, when a sheriff's deputy found his truck and the bodies of his 3 daughters near a remote campground. Authorities say he picked the girls up for a scheduled visitation and never brought them back. All 3 girls were suffocated, found with plastic bags over their heads and their wrists zip-tied.
It's not the decision of a sound mind, and these young girls were a victim.
Court documents obtained by Law and Crime reveal Decker was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and was supposed to get mental health treatment and anger management, but had not. Decker and his ex-wife Whitney had recently gone through a custody battle. Whitney telling the court Decker was living out of his truck and battling PTSD.
There were reported concerns of Travis being homeless and financially stressed recently.
Still, the veteran fought for more time with his daughters, defending his parenting in a court recording.
We've never done anything that was unsafe or anything I wouldn't want to put myself in. I understand that my current position when I'm by myself isn't ideal, but my daughters aren't a part of that.
A judge eventually ruled against him, revoking overnight visits and reducing his parenting time. Ultimately, Decker was granted visitation with his daughters for 3 hours on Fridays and 8 hours every other weekend. On May 30th, Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia left for a scheduled visit with their father, and 3 days later, their bodies were found. Whitney Decker speaking out for the first time earlier this month.
I truly hope that the legacy of the girls' lives lives in everyone's heart forever. They were incredible.
Images released by investigators show how Decker may be altering his appearance after weeks on the run, if he's still alive. Hikers reported seeing a lone man in the wilderness in early June. A helicopter crew responded and briefly spotted someone matching the description. But as the chopper passed overhead, the person disappeared into the trees.
The behavior that we saw from the lone hiker did not match. That was typical with everyone else we were seeing up there. So again, that sparked our interest.
Authorities say it wouldn't be unprecedented for someone to evade capture in the terrain. Back in 2020, Jorge Alcantara Gonzalez, who was wanted in a homicide case, survived 23 days on the run in much of the same terrain, both men having knowledge of off-grid survival. Now, just like then, authorities are relying on tips from the public to track Decker down. And if he's still alive, they say he remains dangerous.
When you see him, say something to us. We want to find him. We want to bring him to justice. We want to set up the opportunity for him to stand in front of our courts and our judges and face justice and hear the voices of Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia, whose lives were senselessly taken by evil.
And here to break down this story with me is founder of the Survival University and a wilderness survival instructor, Jason Marsteiner. Jason, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just jump right in. I've been covering this story for a while. I've spoken to police officers and other legal experts about their thoughts. But given that it's been 4 weeks and they don't know if he's alive or not, I wanted to speak to someone who may know a little more information just about surviving in those conditions. So first, let me start off with, do you think that Travis Decker is still alive?
My honest opinion, I don't think he is. But really, at this point, it could go either way. Surviving off the land is difficult. I've done quite a bit of research on Travis. The average person can survive probably for about 3 days. The environment he's in is very rugged. If he were to stop and slow down and gather the resources and the food that he needs to, they would be able to find signs of him, right? They haven't found anything. From what I found, they found nothing other than somebody potentially saw him 25 miles away from where his truck was located, where the girls were located. He could probably make that in a 2 to 3 day hike. But with it being 4 weeks out, it's a stretch for him to be alive at the moment.
Right. And just from, I know you said the average person would only make it a few days, but with his training of being, just ex-military, and from what you've seen of the terrain in Washington, what kind of skills would someone need to survive out there for weeks?
Okay, so we'll touch on the ex-military thing. I train military special forces. I train worldly adventurers. I train your average weekend warrior. I train people that have never done anything like this before. But we'll go back to the military. I've done some research on Travis, on his military training. He was an infantryman. Now, he tried to go to Ranger school, and he failed out or dropped out for whatever reason. So he's not an Army Ranger. He did not go through SEER training. From what I saw, he's not had any real wilderness survival training. That's not part of military training. They do evasion, resistance, and escape. They learn how to, they learn navigation, they learn basic first aid, they learn they combat techniques, but survival training is not necessarily something that they really get into. So calling him a survival expert because of his military training is just not a thing. The majority of the military guys that I have out here do not have real survival training. I've had military vets that have never done any sort of bushcraft or fieldcraft or any sort of legitimate survival training after years and years and years of service. The only people that really get legitimate survival training are your Green Berets and your Navy SEALs and high-level Rangers and, high-level Special Forces group. Travis was not high-level Special Forces. He was an infantryman that was attached to a Ranger regiment. So there's no confirmed documentation of him having survival training outside of the basic infantry training. Now, he might have done stuff on his own on the side.
Right. I was just about to say, I think that's what police are saying, because on top of, whatever he learned in the military, his family, according to police, they say that Travis has been doing this his whole life, where he'll just go off the grid for months at a time. They said up to 2 months at one point, hiding food or caching is what it's called, and just surviving off of little to nothing. So I think that's why they were a little concerned about just his expertise. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, if he's staying in that location, they would have found some sort of trace of him. They would have, he's got to have, most likely we would have to start a fire to hunt, to cook food. They haven't found any traps. They haven't found anything from what I found that shows that he's still in the area. They potentially found, or allegedly, somebody saw somebody 25 miles away from his truck. That could have been him. That person was evading being seen. And from my knowledge of the area, I have done some training in Washington. My primary location is in Colorado. That's where we do our training, up in the mountains of Colorado. But I've done training in Washington. I've done training in the jungles of Costa Rica. I've done training in the desert. I've done training in the Midwest. So I'm familiar with multiple climates and areas. Where he's at, from my knowledge, I've never been to the exact location where he's at, but I've done some research. And it looks rugged. It looks heavy forest, and it's difficult for him to move. Now, there are hiking trails, but there's people on those hiking trails, and nobody's seen him outside of that one person. You got law enforcement looking for him. You got canine units looking for him. Nobody's found anything. He did have a 2 to 3 day head start on law enforcement. So he, 2 to 3 days would have been where he potentially got to 25 miles away before somebody spotted him. If he's still on the move, they're looking for him. It's tough, right? It's really tough. No matter what, even if he's got caches or whatever, it's possible that he could be doing it. But with so many people looking for him, and his state of mind and the high level of stress and everything that's going on, he would have made a mistake. I doubt he's that good. He's not Rambo.
Right. Right. And so, like, realistically, someone can't really go completely off the grid, correct?
Well, so from what I read is he has 2.5 years of off-grid living. What does that mean exactly? Is he out living out of his truck? Is he living out of a tent? Is he got a little hunting cabin? Off-grid living is completely different than wilderness survival. Two different things. I mean, I'm out here at my training camp location right now, and I stay out here for 5 months, 4 to 5 months during the year. During that entire time, I'm off-grid living. But as you can see, I'm in a trailer right now, but I'm off-grid. So really, off-grid mostly means that you're not connected to a power network, water supply, whatever. So I'm curious what his true off-grid living is, and if he's really been out there underneath a tarp with a knife and a little bit of food and just surviving off the land. Now, given that, if he's been doing that, living off the land in a survival situation, he's not been doing it under the high stress that he's under right now. So it's, again, very difficult situation. His ability to just vanish and disappear is pretty slim.
Right. And you brought up food a second ago. What kind of food sources are even available in a place like this?
Well, food sources available in a place like this, if he hasn't set anything up ahead of time, there's food out there, but he's got to slow down and take his time. If people are after him, he doesn't have time to set up traps. That's one of the most productive ways in a survival situation to put food on the table is trapping. But you set up your trap line, and then you hang out there for a considerable amount of time and hope that those traps work. He doesn't have that time. He doesn't have that luxury. The other thing is hunting. Well, we don't know if he's got a firearm. We don't know if he's got a bow. We don't know what tools he has to hunt. And then once he does procure an animal, he would have to cook it. I mean, you can eat raw meat, but most people aren't going to, let's be honest. But there's all sorts of food out there. There's deer and there's elk and there's squirrel and there's rabbit and all that. But it's not an easy thing. You just don't walk out there and be like, I think I'll just go get an animal today, and it magically happens. There are some, from what I found, there are some man-made structures, but most of them are like check-in points. I think there was one place where they could resupply, but nobody saw him there. Could he forage for wild plants? Yes, but in a long-term survival situation, wild plants, unless you get the exact, I shouldn't say exact, there's just not enough proteins and amino acids and nutrients in plants to keep you going long-term. So foraging for plant material or plant edible plants, first of all, he's got to know the plants well. He might know them well, but you have to have a large variety of plants in order to sustain you for long term. Otherwise, you're just starving slowly.
What's the biggest mistake, in your opinion, do you think that people make when trying to live off grid or in hiding?
In hiding? Well, I mean, there's two different things there. Living off grid. I think I do a lot of case studies. One in particular, there there were two sisters and a child that tried to go off grid. They watched some YouTube channels. They read some survival books, and I think it was in Colorado. They went out into the mountains in a tent, and they had a few months worth of food, and then they tried to live off grid, and all three of them died, unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
I think the biggest mistake that people make is overconfidence. I do this for a living, and it would be hard for me to live off grid for an extended period of time, for a real long time. Now, granted, if I weren't worried about breaking laws or anything like that, I could live a little bit longer. But I would carry the proper tools with me, and it would be a substantial pack: hunting tools, cooking equipment, shelter, fire, all the things, water purification systems. My understanding is Travis doesn't have anything, unless he does have those caches out there, which is possible. But still, that's going to slow him down. That extra weight, when you've got law enforcement, so many law enforcement and canine units and aerial support looking for you, they would have spotted him by now, I think.
That's a good point, because they are using a lot of technology and a lot of resources to try to find Travis, and still they haven't been able to. And that's why, so many people are believing that maybe he is not alive because of that. Like, are there tricks to avoiding things like thermal detection or drone surveillance?
Well, it's easy. I think it's easy to avoid typical, like a drone surveillance or a helicopter flying over. I mean, tree cover is easy. I mean, we work with Flight for Life. That's a medical helicopter out here during our wilderness first responder medical training. And we have to be in a big open field with our medical instructor is wearing a high visibility vest, and he walks around on our LZ, our landing zone, in order for the helicopter to see him. Now, if Travis just, once that flyover happens, if Travis just stops moving and squats down next to a bush or a tree, or even in an open field, he's going to be difficult to see. Now, as far as thermal goes, if they got thermal detection, which I'm not sure if they do or not, it's difficult, but there are ways to defeat it, but it's not going to be an easy thing. And if he's not carrying those tools with him, they'd be able to spot him.
Well, we know that Travis has a history of PTSD and mental health issues, according to court documents. How much does mental state play into survival?
100%. So we talk about the rule of threes out here. Typically, what's known as a person can survive 3 minutes without oxygen, which I relate to your body, your health. 3 hours exposed to extreme elements. 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and 3 months without human contact. That's typically what most people talk about. But what people tend to forget is you can't survive 3 seconds without hope. That is your mental stability. If your mind isn't right, if you're scared, if you've got law enforcement chasing you, if you're PTSD, if you're in this manic state, or he's going through an emotional roller coaster ride from what he's done, right? So he's not in a good mental state. He's struggling, and I guarantee you he's thought about taking his own life. And that creeps up on you. That gets in your mind, especially when you're out there alone and you're in a high stress situation. Negative thoughts just continue to compound. They just grow and grow and grow within you. The typical person, Travis, there's obviously something wrong with him mentally, but I'm going to say that he's not in a good place mentally, and he's going to struggle greatly if he's still alive.
Right. And I agree. And so we just spoke about the mental state and how he could be feeling. But let's talk about physically. What toll does this take on someone, especially after several weeks?
Oh, well, I mean, if he's not eating, If he's well, I mean, there's water out there, right? He can. Washington, everybody knows, and Washington is a very rainy state. The area he's in, I believe it's rained since he's been out there, so he can hydrate. Um, Whether that water's clean or not, he could get sick from drinking bad water, obviously. But if he's collecting rainwater, he's okay. But food, I run my students through at the end of we have a 50-day class. At the end of the 50-day class, we run them through a challenge where they have to survive off the land for 5 days. And they don't eat unless they um, uh, forage for food. Now, we can't legally hunt or fish during that time, so I do make them perform tasks to get a small amount of food, but they got to perform those tasks. And I tell you, after day 3, everybody's moving slow. Everybody's got mind fog. They're moving. They're not at performing at their top level, and they make mistakes. And I'm there as a safety net for them, of course. If I wasn't there as a safety net for them and checking in on them and checking in on their mental stability and their physical state, they do good. I mean, they have the skills by the time I'm done with them, but they're declining fast because they're not eating properly. And your body, when you're out there surviving, doing whatever it takes and running from law enforcement and canines and hiding from helicopters, you're burning calories and you're burning them fast. If he's not replacing those calories with food, he's going to go downhill fast. And he's got, he can only carry so much food with him.
Well, what about adrenaline, right? Like, how much does adrenaline factor into someone's ability to survive?
Adrenaline, you get adrenaline spikes, it's only going to carry you so far, right? He's going to crash. He might have an adrenaline spike for maybe an hour or so, but he's going to roller coaster ride. He's going to go up and down, but those adrenaline spikes burn calories, and yeah, he'll crash.
If he's alive, would he likely be traveling at night and staying still during the day?
Man, I couldn't imagine traveling night through the terrain that he's in. From my time in Washington, hell, I damn near got lost during the day cutting cross trail in the forest out there. I mean, it's thick forest. And he's got to do that to avoid detection during the day. At night, a lot could happen. I mean, there's steep ravines, there's washouts, there's down trees, there's animals, there's bears. A lot of predators move at night. Traveling at night in that terrain, from what I know, be very, very difficult. It's slow moving.
Is it possible that someone like Decker could manipulate a search by planting false clues?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't found anything, have they?
They haven't. I mean, they haven't released everything. They say that they're not able to release everything to the public. But
man, I understand. Yeah, that's true. So I mean, they did find a note in his truck. They haven't released that. We have no idea what that says. So I can't make an opinion or assumption off of that note. They did find a bloody handprint on his truck. Who knows what that could have been? He could have placed that there, or he could have been injured. That seems a little bit convenient, but who knows? I mean, that's all speculation on that. But yeah, he could potentially plant evidence. But you would think stuff gets leaked all the time, right? We always hear things get leaked. Nothing has been leaked whatsoever. Nobody said anything.
Right now, we know that they are sending dogs, trying to see if they find a body, trying to see if he's alive or not alive. We just don't know at this point. But are there ways to mask scent from dogs?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a canine expert. I imagine there are. I mean, I do work with people with canines. They'd be the ones that actually answer that and be more knowledgeable about it. I think with his state of mind and everything, I just don't think he's that prepared. I mean, for him to be that prepared and have it, he would have to have a long-term diabolical mind. And I don't know if that is the case here. This, to me, while he did, search on a few days before on going to Canada, I don't know if he planned this out for the amount of time that he would need to have everything in place for, hiding from the law enforcement, hiding from dogs. I don't think it's that easy to take off the scent from a dog, but
Do you think he could get to Canada by foot?
well, I did that. I checked into that too. So we're looking at, if he follows the PCT, the Pacific Coast Trail, for him to do it in a somewhat stealth mode, he's looking at probably 3 weeks. I think it's about 300 miles for him to get there. We're looking at about 3 weeks, and that's 3 weeks with people looking for him. That's a heavily traveled trail, and I'm sure most people that are walking on that trail are aware of Travis. And then you've got the Border Patrol up there on the Canadian-U.S. border, both on the U.S. side and the Canadian side. They're looking for him. Yeah, he could make it, but man, it's a trek, and he's under a lot of stress, and he doesn't have the resources.
Right. Well, this is a story that we will be following very closely. Hopefully, we'll be getting an update soon. Jason, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thanks again for having me.
Travis Decker is described as 5'8" with black hair and brown eyes. He was last seen wearing a tan or green shirt and dark shorts. If anyone sees him, they're urged to call 911 immediately. For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.